Welcome to Legacy Black Power. 15 Black R&B female singers who were the worst sex addicts. They stepped onto the stage wrapped in glittering gowns, lips painted the color of passion, and voices that flowed straight from their hearts. To the crowd, they were goddesses, radiant, untouchable. But few knew the truth behind those dazzling smiles. One was publicly abandoned by the man she loved after confessing that her desires didn't fit the world's narrow mold of feminine. Another hid in her dressing room, tears smudging her makeup, after falling for someone new just to fill the emptiness inside. They weren't sinners. They weren't broken. They were simply honest, brave enough to live as they truly were. Yet, that honesty came at a price. It pushed them to the edges of music history, where beauty and pain intertwined in silence. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about sex. It's a war between instinct and prejudice, between love and loneliness. So watch until the end and ask yourself this: is having a strong desire sin, or simply a sign of being human? Tina Turner, the fire that made even love run for cover. Once hailed as a thunder goddess of stage, Tina was more than a performer. She was a storm that couldn't be contained. With legs that commanded every spotlight and hair that blazed like lightning, she didn't just sing. She ignited every room she entered. Her power didn't stop at music. It was in the way she lived, loved, and defied everything expected of a woman in her era, fierce, free, and utterly fearless. Fame came early, and with it came whispers. Men adored her, but few could endure the heat. She's dangerous, they said, not because she played games, but because she burned too bright. One tour manager remembered a night in Las Vegas, 1978. After the show, Tina vanished with a young dancer. 2 days later, he returned, silent, shaken, and forever changed. "I love her," he murmured, "but I'm not strong enough to be loved back." Rumors swirled of a brief affair with a celebrated white movie star in the 1980s. 3 weeks of passion in a Manhattan apartment that ended one midnight when he slipped away, leaving only a note. "You're beautiful, but you burn everything." Even television tried to dim her flame. Producers once cut her performance, calling her outfit too provocative for family audiences. But Tina never bowed. "I'm Tina Turner," she told one reporter. "I won't apologize for being a woman, and women have a right to be loved with all their bodies." In her final years, resting in the quiet peace of Switzerland, she reflected with no regrets. "Some people ran from my fire," she once whispered to a journalist. "That's fine. Loving a flame is a choice." Because Tina Turner didn't just set the stage ablaze. She made the world see that some women are born to love fearlessly, to live unapologetically, and to burn brightly, even if it means standing alone in the glow of their own fire. Aretha Franklin, the untouchable queen of soul. She stood in the sacred glow of music, like an empress without a crown. Her presence commanded reverence. Her voice, a prayer that could heal or haunt. Yet behind the sequins and spotlight lived a woman few ever truly knew. Those closest to her whisper of a heart ruled by instinct and a body that ached for love. Even as a teenager, Aretha carried a maturity far beyond her years. By 14, she was already a mother. What followed were whispered affairs and late-night recording sessions that blurred the line between music and desire. One anonymous musician once confessed, "When Aretha called you to her home studio, you didn't just play, you surrendered." They recorded only at night. Sometimes, the music never made it to tape. "I was her lover, her composer, her servant," he said. "And I've never seen anyone love the way she did, with fire and faith." Aretha never spoke publicly about her private world, but stories lingered. At one award show, she vanished 15 minutes before her performance. When she returned, her lips were smudge red, her eyes glowed with a secret only she knew. A cameraman later noticed a curtain slightly ajar and a silk handkerchief left behind, still scented with perfume. Producers called her difficult, but Aretha called it truth. She refused to be molded into the industry's idea of a polite diva. When recording Dr. Feelgood, she insisted it be sung slower, deeper. "It has to feel like love-making," she told him. "Otherwise, it ain't real." Even as her body weakened in her final years, her spirit refused to fade. She sang until her last breath. One close friend recalled, Aretha wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of being remembered wrong, as cold or untouchable. She wanted people to know she was human. She loved, she hurt, she felt. Aretha Franklin wasn't just a queen of soul. She was a woman who dared to live by instinct in a world that tried to silence her. A queen not of crowns, but of courage, passion, and raw, unfiltered truth. Donna Summer, the woman who made the whole world moan. She didn't just sing about love, she embodied it. Every breath, every sigh, every pulse in her body seemed to move to a disco rhythm of desire. When Love to Love You Baby hit the airwaves, America wasn't ready. It wasn't just a song. It was a 17-minute symphony of gasps and moans, an erotic revolution disguised as music. Donna later revealed that the studio lights were turned off during the recording. Only a dim red glow remained as the music crept around her like a lover's touch. Producer Giorgio Moroder whispered, "Imagine you're in love with someone the world won't let you have." And she did. What came next was history. Critics called her a pornographer. Radio stations banned her. But Donna didn't retreat. She leaned in deeper. Her lyrics became even more sensual, her voice dripping with heat and vulnerability, like whispered confessions between two souls lost in passion. During a tour in Italy, she vanished one night with a young fashion designer. The next morning, she appeared in nothing but a man's shirt, her lipstick smeared, her smile untamed. When a friend teasingly asked about her night, she simply said, "Last night, I found a new melody." There were whispers, too, about her closeness with a female photographer, long nights, secret getaways, and photos no one ever saw. When pressed, Donna only said, "We shared inspiration." Sometimes, inspiration comes from places you can't talk about in public. In her diary before she died, Donna wrote, "If I had to live again, I would love the same way. Women can moan too, and no one has the right to judge." Donna Summer wasn't just a queen of disco. She was a high priestess of liberation. Through every sigh and every note, she taught the world that pleasure isn't shameful, it's power. And her moans? They still echo through time, forever alive on the dance floor of desire. Whitney Houston, the angel of hidden desires. She was America's golden daughter, blessed with a voice that could lift hearts to heaven. But behind that divine glow lived a woman of restless passion, a soul who loved too deeply, too dangerously, and too freely for the world she lived in. Whitney didn't just fall in love. She surrendered to it. Friends say her heart never cared for labels. Among those closest to her was Robin Crawford, her confidant, her shadow, her rumored great love. In the quiet corners of the 1980s, they shared an apartment in Atlanta, a place filled with jazz, red wine, and nights where whispers spoke louder than any song. In her memoir, Robin recalled Whitney once whispering, "I can love men, but only you make me feel safe." Even in the studio, that hidden ache followed her. During the recording of Saving All My Love for You, a veteran Arista engineer remembered her arriving with red eyes after a sleepless night. When she sang the line, "For tonight is the night that I'm feeling all right," she closed her eyes and leaned into the mic like she was confessing something no one was meant to hear. "That wasn't just singing," he said softly. "That was truth." But Whitney's heart refused to be contained by secrecy alone. She once shared a tender affair with a young male dancer, 15 years her junior. They were seen at the Ritz-Carlton, clinging to each other like two children hiding from the world. "His eyes looked stormy," said a hotel worker. But hers, they glowed like love was both her salvation and her curse. Yet Hollywood has never forgiven women for loving outside the lines. Rumors of her relationships with both men and women spread like wildfire. Music executives cut scenes, silenced her sensuality, and demanded she stay pure. Whitney would only smile and say, "If I'm an angel, then why do I want touch?" In her final years, she wrote in her diary that she felt trapped between two worlds, virtue and desire. She never apologized for loving too much. But that love, wild and beautiful, left her achingly lonely. Whitney Houston didn't just leave behind an immortal voice. She left behind a portrait of a woman too real for the world's illusions. Fragile, yet fearless. Holy, yet human. A lover who defied definitions. and in doing so, made the world fall in love with her forever. Millie Jackson, the woman who said out loud what everyone else was too afraid to think. Millie didn't sing songs the way other artists did. She lived them. Every note was a confession. Every lyric a wound reopened. Her voice carried the sweat of desire, the gasp of heartbreak, and the raw honesty of a woman who had loved too deeply, too often, and survived to tell the tale. She didn't crave acceptance. She demanded to be heard. In the early 70s, she released If You're Not Back in Love by Monday, a song that stopped people in their tracks. Midway through, Millie breaks from melody and launches into a fiery monologue, tearing into a cheating lover as if she were right there on the phone with him. Radio stations cut the part out, but audiences loved her even more. She speaks for us, women said. And when she moaned into the mic, it wasn't performance, it was liberation. A dancer who once toured with her recalled being invited to her hotel room. Expecting something romantic, he followed. But when the door closed, Millie pulled a microphone from her purse and said, "You've got 5 minutes to make me feel something. If you don't, I'll make a joke about you on stage." He laughed, but by the end of the night, he wasn't laughing anymore. Millie always had the upper hand. She even dated a white DJ at a time when R&B was still segregated. They kept it quiet, but when she recorded All the Way Lover, her sultry spoken word section was rumored to have been whispered to him in real life. She never confirmed it. She didn't need to. The way she sang it said everything. Hollywood tried to box her in, to make her the pretty, polished diva they wanted. But Millie refused. "I didn't come here to be a doll," she said. "I came here to be a woman." Later in life, when asked if she regretted being so blunt, Millie just laughed. "I scared a lot of men," she said, "but nobody ever forgot me." Millie Jackson wasn't made for everyone. She was made for the women who've been told to keep quiet. And thanks to her, they finally learned how to moan, how to shout, how to love, and how to own every inch of themselves, even when the world said they shouldn't. Patti LaBelle. I'm Patti LaBelle, sweet as sugar, but hot enough to sizzle on a frying pan. With hair that could silence a room, eyes that could melt stone, and a voice powerful enough to wake the dead, Patti wasn't just a singer. She was a force of nature, a mother's warmth, an angel's voice, and the body of a goddess who refused to apologize for burning too brightly. Once she confessed, "I love with all my heart, and I've never been ashamed that my body needs love as much as my voice needs to sing." That was Patti, raw, fearless, and gloriously human. Even as a teenager, she had a presence that made men lose sleep. A neighbor from Philly still remembers her sitting on the stoop at 15, wearing a knee-length dress, humming softly as the sunlight hit her skin. It wasn't innocence in her eyes, he said. It was knowing she was sexy and not caring who noticed. By the 1970s, Patti wasn't just famous. She was infamous. Her concerts were pure electricity, often described as too hot for television. After one show in Atlanta, whispers spread that she hadn't gone back to her hotel alone. The next morning, a young dancer from her tour was seen leaving her suite, shirt unbuttoned, collar damp with sweat. When Patti loved, she didn't whisper, she screamed. And if you couldn't handle the fire, you had no business stepping into her flame. A former co-star once claimed she recorded, "If you only knew," after breaking up with a secret lover, the only man who ever dared to dominate her. But the affair burned out fast. He couldn't handle a woman who demanded not just his body, but his soul. At a show in Paris, a backstage manager recalled Patti closing off her dressing room after the final curtain, asking for 2 hours of privacy. There was no music, the guard said quietly, just the sound of the bed creaking. Even in her later years, Patti's sensual power hasn't dimmed. In a recent interview, she laughed and said, "I don't regret a single love. Maybe I hurt a few people because I wanted too much, on stage and in bed, but that's who I am." Because Patti LaBelle has never been easy to define. She's the kind of woman born to burn, and she's never once apologized for it. If you're still here, listening not just with your ears but with your heart, then maybe you understand. Women like Patti were once called too much, too passionate, too demanding, too alive. But ask yourself this. If a man had her fire, would anyone dare to call him too much? Or is it only because she's a woman that her hunger for love was treated as a sin? Etta James, the woman who sang like she was burning alive. Etta James wasn't just a voice. She was a storm. A woman who didn't just sing about love and pain. She lived them, bleeding each lyric as if it might be her last breath. Her voice didn't simply moan. It trembled, growled, and seduced, like the sound of midnight itself remembering the first touch. From the aching desperation of I'd rather go blind the way she'd lock eyes with a man in the front row, Etta performed like a wild creature chained by passion. Fierce, vulnerable, and always one heartbeat away from breaking free. Her life began in chaos. Raised without a father and a mother lost to addiction, Etta learned early that love came with bruises. At 16, she ran away with a white musician twice her age, leaving only a note behind. I need to know if my body is lovable. That single line said everything about her hunger, not for fame, but for validation, for touch, for proof that she was seen. Producer Rick Hall once revealed that her sultry hit Tell Mama was inspired by a night so raw, so physical, that the drummer involved couldn't perform the next evening. She sang it, Hall said, like she was reliving every move, every sigh. And there were stories, wild, whispered ones, like the night in Chicago when hotel staff found her in a bathtub between two men, laughing, pouring wine, and humming softly. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen, the maid said later, like watching a leopard rest after a hunt. Critics called her unrefined, too sexual, too dangerous. But Etta only turned the heat higher, singing songs that dripped with desire and defiance. I used to love like crazy, she once confessed. I slept with men whose names I don't remember, but I know they remember me, and when I sing, I moan for all the things people are too afraid to say. Etta James is gone now, but her fire still burns. No diva has ever matched that raw, reckless honesty. She was both light and shadow, beauty and pain, and that's what made her unforgettable. LaVern Baker, the tiger in a ball gown. LaVern didn't need to strip to be sexy. All she had to do was look at you, that sly smile, that first velvet note, and you were done for. In the buttoned-up 1950s and early 60s, when black women were expected to be polite and restrained, LaVern was pure instinct wrapped in silk. Her peers called her a tiger in a velvet dress. No one dared to challenge her, not on stage, and certainly not in bed. As a teenager, she was already too much for polite company. One boyfriend's parents banned her from their house because, as they put it, that girl looks dangerous. But a few months later, that same boy was climbing through her window after midnight. He didn't know what he was in for. LaVern once laughed at a party. I didn't teach him to sing. I taught him a moan. When her career exploded with Jim Dandy, she became a quiet storm of desire. A saxophonist who toured with her once confessed that whenever she hit the chorus, he had to turn away, just to hide his reaction. She didn't sing into the microphone, he said. She whispered into my soul from across the stage. One night in St. Louis, after a show, a hotel clerk reported hearing wild music and laughter coming from LaVern's room. As he got closer, he heard a man gasp, "I can't take it anymore." The next morning, that same man strutted out of the hotel, like he'd just gone 12 rounds with passion itself. Rumor had it, LaVern carried on a secret affair with a married gospel singer, a man of God who couldn't resist her fire. Whenever she came to his city, they found a way to meet. No one ever confirmed it, but when she once recorded a heartbreak ballad filled with real tears, the producer asked, "Who are you thinking about?" LaVern simply said, "Someone God won't let me have." Late in life, she whispered to a reporter, "I never apologized for being too much. I only regret that no one ever loved me for more than one night." LaVern Baker was fire dressed as royalty. She didn't ask permission to seduce. She commanded it. She roared, and everyone who ever got close to her walked away marked, carrying a burn that would never heal. Betty Davis, the fearless woman who refused to be tamed. She wasn't like any other artist to ever set foot in the music industry. Betty didn't ask for permission to be seductive. She was seduction itself. She didn't dress to impress anyone, and she wasn't afraid to be called wild. From her fiery eyes to her untamed curls and that aching, growling voice that tore through every song, Betty Davis made people unsure whether to love her or fear her. That unfiltered energy, that raw defiance, made her a legend that even Hollywood didn't quite know how to handle. Born into a strict conservative home, Betty was labeled too much before she even became a woman. At just 14, she was expelled from school for writing a song called I Want to Love You Like a Midsummer Fever. But instead of shame, she turned rebellion into rhythm, taking the song straight to a smoky nightclub and singing it to roaring applause and whistles. She tried modeling for a while, but the fashion world felt suffocating. So she turned to songwriting and set the industry on fire. Her breakout hit, If I'm in luck, I might get picked up, opened with the bold line, I wear my pants too tight for someone to look at me longer. When a major label called her music too erotic for the public, Betty just laughed and released it herself. The record sold out in a week. One studio engineer still remembers the night she walked into the booth, asked for the lights to be turned off, took off her top and said, I need to sing for my skin, not my mind. What followed was pure electricity, wild, moaning, primal vocals that made the editor leave the room because he couldn't handle it. The engineer later said, That was the only time I ever saw someone make love to music. Her romance with jazz legend Miles Davis sent shockwaves through the industry. Not because she was famous, but because she was too powerful for a man used to control. When he once struck her, she stood tall, looked him dead in the eye, and walked away. A year later, she released They Say I'm Different, a battle cry for every woman told to sit down and behave. Hollywood didn't like Betty Davis. She didn't bow, didn't apologize, and didn't conform. But everyone who crossed her path remembered her forever. One lover said, It took me 3 days to recover after sleeping with her. She didn't say, I love you. She just whispered, I don't need love. I need fire. In her later years, Betty withdrew from the spotlight, choosing silence over spectacle. Yet in a letter to a close friend, she wrote, If I ever hurt anyone, it's because I spent too long in prison in dresses and teachings. Betty Davis wasn't made for every generation. She was made for those who dare, those who live loud, love fiercely, and refuse to hide. Her message still burns. My body doesn't need to be hidden. It needs to be heard. Natalie Cole, Lady of the Dark Loves. Natalie Cole, daughter of the legendary Nat King Cole, once embodied elegance for a new generation. With her royal beauty, velvety voice, and effortless grace, she seemed untouchable, a woman born to wear pearls and command the spotlight. But behind the silk gowns and polished lipstick lived a restless soul, hungry for passion, freedom, and danger. In college, Natalie's friends used a joke that she loved fast and forgot slow. One classmate recalled, She dated 3 men in a single week. She called her emotional rehearsal schedule. One of those men later produced her debut album, saying, She didn't just sing, she made love to every lyric. Her affairs became legend. In her memoir, a fellow artist revealed a secret romance between Natalie and a white drummer already engaged to another woman. They met in dimly lit hotel rooms under false names, sharing whispers until sunrise. The song, I've Got Love on My Mind, was said to be written for him, though his name never appeared. When asked if she loved him, Natalie simply said, I didn't love him. I loved being with him, and I knew he loved me too. Those who worked closest to her saw a side the world never knew. One dresser remembered, Natalie never wore underwear on stage. She said it made her feel free. After every show, she vanished into the night, sometimes a fan, sometimes a chauffeur, chasing moments that made her feel alive. One longtime companion confessed, There were nights I sat in the car for 3 hours, just waiting for her to finish her inspiration. The tabloids called her wild. Critics labeled her promiscuous. Rumors of drugs and late-night parties shadowed her success. But Natalie never apologized. In one rare interview, she shrugged and said, I've loved some bad men and some worse, but I never regretted feeling alive. In her final months, as her body weakened, she poured her memories onto paper, letters, fragments, confessions. In one note to her son, she wrote, If I could live again, I'd still love the same way, Fast, fierce, and without fear. It was short, but it was real. And real love is never wrong. Natalie Cole will always be remembered as an icon of grace. Yet those who truly knew her, who heard her sing through tears in a dimly lit room, understood that beneath that noble woman's poise was a soul that ached from loving too deeply and living too beautifully for this world. Jean Knight, the lady of the night who played by no one's rules. She didn't need short skirts or cheap tricks to keep men awake. Jean carried herself like a general, commanding, fearless, and impossible to ignore. Her voice could slice through smoke-filled clubs, her eyes hinting that she always knew more than she let on. When Mr. Big Stuff hit the airwaves, it wasn't just a song. It was a declaration of war, a woman's anthem sung by someone who had walked over hearts she could barely remember. Before she was even of legal age, Jean was already captivating nightclubs with her raw magnetism. One manager once said, "The lights didn't make her shine, she brought her own." In 1971, whispers spread of a secret affair between Jean and a powerful Haitian record mogul. Whenever she played New Orleans, they'd meet in her third-floor apartment. Neighbors said the nights were filled with music, laughter, and sometimes moans. One woman remembered, "I don't know what went on in there, but she came out in the morning like she'd been reborn." Jean was never afraid to shock. During one live taping, she suddenly rewrote her lyrics into a storm of sensual slurs. The cameraman blushed. Jean didn't. She simply said, "I sing for the women still locked in the kitchen." Her most legendary story came from a show in Jackson, Mississippi. After performing, she called a few male dancers backstage. 2 hours later, they stumbled out, shirts wrinkled, hair wild, and eyes dazed. One whispered, "She called me her toy and I didn't mind." Jean Knight was once banned from a major theater for being too sexual. When asked about it, she laughed and said, "I don't need a stage, just a room with lights, and a man who's not afraid of women." Jean Knight may be gone now, but she left behind more than music. She left a legacy of defiance, freedom, and unapologetic womanhood. As one admirer once said, she didn't need to moan. One look from her was enough. Sylvia Robinson, the hidden pleasure queen of hip-hop, before she became the mother of hip-hop, the mastermind behind Sugar Hill Records, and a visionary who brought rap to the mainstream. Sylvia Robinson was something far more dangerous, a woman unafraid to sing about desire in an era when women were told to stay silent. In 1973, Sylvia released Pillow Talk, a song that sent shockwaves through the music world. With its breathy moans, whispered confession, and raw sensuality, it sounded less like a studio recording and more like a woman lost in love or lust in real time. There was no pretense, no studio magic. Every sigh, every shiver, every whispered note was her own. When a reporter once asked where her inspiration came from, Sylvia smiled and said, "I just recorded the real feeling after an unforgettable night of love." A sound engineer who worked that day recalled, "The studio went silent. Then Sylvia pulled the curtains, told everyone to step outside, and started recording. I couldn't tell if she was singing or making love to her memories." Rumors swirled about an affair with a married basketball star who visited her office in New York long after midnight. One assistant remembered a night when rain hammered against the window panes. Sylvia appeared in a bronze silk dress, her hair tousled, her lips a deep shade of red. She closed the door softly and whispered, "You don't need to say anything tonight. Just listen to me breathe." Even as her fame grew, Hollywood never knew what to do with Sylvia Robinson. To some, she was too sensual, too bold, too unapologetically feminine. Investors backed away, calling her brand too risky. Sylvia didn't flinch. "I'm a woman," she said in one of her final interviews. "I built an empire on rhythm, the rhythm of music and the rhythm of my body." Until her last days, Sylvia kept a framed photo of herself recording Pillow Talk beside her bed. "I gave hip-hop a voice," she once said. "But before that, I gave women a voice." Sylvia Robinson wasn't just a mother of hip-hop. She was the first woman to turn pleasure into art, and she never apologized for it. Barbara Mason, the poet of the unspoken moan. Barbara Mason never had to scream to be heard. She whispered. She sighed, and with every breathy note, she pulled listeners into a forbidden world of longing, one that few dare to reveal since the day Yes, I'm Ready first played on the radio. Her music wasn't loud. It lingered, soft and aching, like the memory of a lover's touch. She wasn't the image of a classic seductress. Yet there was something irresistible in her delicate frame, her glistening eyes, and that voice, half confession, half invitation, as if she were singing with her head resting on someone's chest. One musician recalled that during the recording of I Am Your Woman, She Is Your Wife, Barbara asked for the studio lights to be turned off. Only candles burned. The air smelled of perfume. She wasn't pretending, he said quietly. She was feeling it, hurting and wanting. In the late 1970s, Barbara's life mirrored her lyrics. She had a secret affair with a renowned church organist, a married man with children. They met in dimly lit motels after her shows, hiding from the world but not from their own desires. A hotel maid once claimed she could hear Barbara's moans echoing faintly through the hallway, not because they were loud, but because they were heartbreakingly real. Barbara never denied her sensuality. I don't sing like a singer, she once said. I sing like a woman being loved. Some radio stations banned her songs, calling them too erotic, but the public disagreed. Fans didn't just hear passion, they heard truth. In her music was a quiet confession that women crave not only love, but satisfaction. When a producer once asked if she feared being misunderstood, Barbara smiled and answered, I'd rather they think I'm moaning than think I'm silent. Barbara Mason didn't just sing about love, she embodied it. Every lyric, every sigh, every whispered note was a pulse from her heart. She didn't just write songs. She rewrote what it means to be a woman who loves without apology. Marlena Shaw, the lady of unspoken desires. Marlena Shaw was the kind of woman who could silence a room without saying a word, always poised, always composed, her hair perfectly gathered, her smile faint and knowing, her eyes carrying the weight of things never spoken. On stage, she was grace incarnate. But those lucky enough to share a drink with her after a show knew there was something far more magnetic behind that calm exterior. A quiet fire that didn't need to shout to be felt. She never needed to reveal much. No plunging necklines. No teasing gestures. Just one lingering glance. And you feel like she was undressing your soul layer by layer. Marlena never announced her lovers. She didn't have to. The soul and jazz scene whisper her name like a secret. They said she had been the muse of many, men who were both brilliant and broken, artists who found her a mirror to their own pain. She was the kind of woman you didn't dare flirt with, one bandmate once said, but every man in the room thought about her when she sang. One night at the Blue Note, after a haunting performance of Feel Like Love, Marlena stepped off stage and walked straight to a young drummer. Tonight, she murmured, you played like a man begging for a hug. The two disappeared into the night. No one knew where they went, but everyone agreed. That evening, her final song lasted longer and felt dangerously intimate. A tour staffer from 1992 remembered how Marlena would lock herself in her dressing room after every show. No makeup, no lights, no one allowed in. When she finally emerged, she'd reapply her lipstick, her eyes distant, like she'd just awoken from a dream she couldn't quite let go of. People often mistook her silence for coldness, but she once said, It's not that I don't love, I just don't need to prove to anyone how I loved. And yet, when her diary was found after her death, there was a line that revealed the tenderness she kept hidden. I once loved someone so deeply that if they touched the back of my hand, I could sing an entire song without music. Marlena Shaw was never a woman of scandal. She didn't flaunt her sensuality. She let it live in her songs. Each note carried a quiet warmth that wrapped around listeners like an old memory, the kind that hurts in the sweetest way. Her music reminded people of the nights they couldn't speak their truth, the lovers they couldn't keep, the passion they never dared to live. If sex was forbidden, then music was freedom, a confessional of everything we hide and everything we crave. In her voice lived the ache of sleepless nights, the sting of swallowed tears, and the beauty of love that never found the light. So tonight, as you listen, don't just use your ears. Listen with your heart. Listen with your memories of love, the ones you never told anyone about, And if you believe that everyone deserves the right to love in their own way, then show your support. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and share this message so more people can feel what Marlena made the world feel. Thank you for staying with us until the end. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you'll never miss another story celebrating the icons who changed music, culture, and the very meaning of love. See you next time.